Hello and welcome to Melody and Friends, where I will be taking a virtual tour around the world and interviewing all kinds of wonderful people. And today we land in Denver, Colorado to speak with Sharon Hersh about ambivalence and the holidays. Welcome, Sharon.
It is so good to be with you, Melody. And I love that we're talking about the holidays.
Yes.
And talking about hopefully in ways that are real and not the Hallmark version.
That's right.
That we see every 3 minutes on commercials on television.
Yes. And I think, as we're recovering from the fall and longing to be back in Eden, I see why many times we jump into the Hallmark movies or whatever that makes us feel good. We're on the heels of Thanksgiving holidays, and this is a holiday as well where we get with family. I'm learning myself to embrace the joy and the beauty of family, but also that ambivalent feeling of having grief present at the same time. Sometimes we have family members that we've lost, or sometimes we have broken relationships. And so we have the blessing of the holiday, the family, the gatherings, but it doesn't come without experiencing the loss and grief as well. Do you find that?
I'm sure that everyone who is listening identified with some snatch of what you just said. Maybe we should define ambivalence for people who are wondering why we're attaching that word to the holidays. And ambivalence is the presence of two contradictory emotions.
Yeah.
So I look forward to Christmas and I feel some trepidation about it.
Yeah.
I want to be with my family, and this year I will miss my son, who is in treatment for his addiction during the holiday seasons. I want to be a source of joy and comfort to my elderly parents. And yet I remember seasons from my own years of experiencing family in the past where I have brought sorrow to my parents as they walked with me through a divorce. And there's nothing like the holidays to heighten what is bright and shiny and to heighten what is dark and not so shiny.
Yeah.
And so we do come to the season
Yeah.
where our families are intact or broken, where everyone is home, or people are spread all over the country. We all come to this season, I think, with some ambivalence. I want to buy everything that everyone wants, and I want it to be what everyone wants. But I'm old enough to know that's probably not going to happen. And so I'm already anticipating there'll be disappointment.
Yeah.
And there'll be moments of joy.
Yeah.
And in our world today, Melody, we're not good with that middle ground, that tension.
Yeah.
We want it to be perfect, or we want to pack up our tinsel and our ornaments and go home.
Right.
And so I think we're talking about living in the tension.
Yeah. It was, and I was talking. That's such a great point. And people may have not even thought about this before, but when we think about Christmas night, what do so many people do at the end of Christmas night or after, even lunch? The movies open. So we've opened up Christmas. We've spent time with people. And then we almost have this lull, like, oh my gosh, it's over. Like all the anticipation of what we have prepared for is now over. So let's go to the movies. And I've never even thought about that.
And, another interesting phenomenon that happens in our culture, because I work in the field of addiction, is generally people are not in inpatient treatment centers on Christmas Day. I have been, which might show you have a real problem if you're in a treatment center on Christmas Day. That was years ago. But the week after Christmas is the busiest week for residential treatment centers. I think it's because of that anticipation and then letdown.
Yeah.
And we don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And so we go to the movies and we check out.
Yeah.
We drink too much. We eat too much. We start a new diet. We determine that we're going to go to CrossFit and we're going to lose those 20 pounds. We start the hard 75 and we're going to do dry January and we're going to whip ourselves into shape to somehow divert our hearts from maybe realities that would be good to face, because maybe they have something in common with this true meaning of this season that we're about to celebrate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so good. And when we even think about, so much of what took place, I mean, we know we've all sat in the Christmas story of just Jesus coming in to the world, and not glamorous, not bling and not the presents and all, just lowly. I've spent a season in the Beatitudes, just blessed are those that mourn, blessed are the poor in spirit. And just that embodies Christmas as much as, the joy of a family.
Yes.
And it's just difficult to sit in both, what are some things maybe that we can even, I'm always thinking about practically, how do we practically be where our feet are now? Whether that's joy, whether that's sadness, I've just kind of started the language or the practice of what does it look like to give grief a seat at all these other spaces of happiness and joy. What do you think we can say to people?
Talk about. I think that in order to give grief a seat, which is a way of saying, I want to acknowledge for me personally that my son will not be with us for the holidays. Yeah. I want to acknowledge that my family, because I was divorced 20 years ago, is broken. I need to acknowledge that my parents, who are almost 90 years old, their health is declining. Yeah. And probably we can all acknowledge we have a few less dollars in the bank account. And so that I think in order to give grief a place, in order to allow our hearts to rest, which may sound like an oxymoron when you consider the holidays, have to disentangle ourselves from the word should. Yes. And unfortunately, whenever we anticipate something, which anticipation is good. Yeah. We want those children or those little children to have sugar plums and, all the mystery and magic of Christmas dancing in their heads. Yeah. Anticipation is good. Yeah. But it almost always connects the word should. It should look a certain way. Right. It should engender certain feelings. It should not have other feelings. Yeah. Everyone should be merry and bright. And so if we can disentangle from that word should, and know that it is going to be imperfect. I don't care how much you prepare. I had a friend years ago who told me that she made her little children practice for the holidays for weeks ahead by eating with a tablecloth and china so they would know the right fork to use and they wouldn't spill on the tablecloth. No. And I laugh about that almost every year, thinking, if only we could practice and have a perfect holiday. Yeah. But it's almost like attaching all that expectation to the holiday is a surefire guarantee it's going to backfire. Yes. So that would be my first question. And is, what is a realistic expectation for the holidays? Yeah. And I think it begins with what you just referred to a few minutes ago, Melody. It's remembering that Jesus came to be born in small, humble, unplanned, unwanted place. unseen sometimes place. And if we can be looking for that, can change things.
I love that you just said that. And I think we all have, especially as we continue to talk about how we are in post-COVID, but we all have experienced loss through that. So if we're even trying to go back, we don't necessarily go back just to live in the past, but sometimes we go back to see how we've learned. We go back to see how connection can take place in both loss and beauty and joy. And so I think being able to go back and look at some of the experiences that we've had and revisit those, and in the fact that they can be beautiful. Loss is beautiful, but in some ways because it creates such connection. I think of some of the most difficult times in my life, I've been so connected to people. And in some of the most joyous times in my life, I've been so connected to people. And so being able to go back and look at some of the loss, I think about middle school and high school, just trying to get my kids to engage. And we always talked about what's your high and what's your low. And my daughter this past Thanksgiving, it was so fun. She just got married and we were just sitting around after dinner. And she said, so what is everybody's high and lows of the years? And it was so fun to see my kids begin to take on, things that we've done. And even that's ambivalence. It's like, what is your high and what is your low? And let's sit in that together, both of those together. And so it could even be just sitting with family, sitting with yourself and say, what are some of my highs and my lows this year? And being able to welcome both of them, I think could be another practice.
I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And with that perspective of time, you're not in the same space you were in when your kids were in middle school.
Right.
And so you can see how time has seasoned their lives.
Yes.
And give thanks. I know you and I connected about this subject because I was telling the story of my first holidays after my divorce, which was over 20 years ago. And I was in a frenzy, determined that I was going to have the best holidays ever.
Yeah.
Had all that expectation. I was not going to live in that ambivalence. I did not want this to be a memory that had any lows. And so everyone's favorites. I mean, I crammed that oven full with more dishes. And I'm not the best cook. Let's just be honest.
Stop.
And I remember by the time everyone got, it's true, and everyone will tell you, I'm domestically dysfunctional. But when everyone got there, I mean, my mom checked the turkey and she said, I don't think this is done. And I was trying to make gravy homemade. And I didn't know how. And we were scrambling because, of course, the kids had to go be with the other side of the family for the first time. And so as I was scrambling and trying to get the turkey cooked, and the oven was stuck shut because everything had bubbled over that I crammed in there, and we hurriedly ate the meal so that the kids could go with their father to his house, and my parents were going to help clean up, and I discovered I had no dish soap. And that was kind of the last straw for me, is I sat on the stairs in the foyer and started to cry. And I didn't know it, but my mom, kind of elbowed my dad and said, why don't you go to Walgreens and get some dish soap? And my dad slipped out, and as the kids were getting their coats on to go be with the other part of their family, my dad came in with the dish soap, and somehow everyone left, and I did the dishes with lots of tears and talking to Jesus about this not being what I wanted. Yeah. But Melody, I look back on that now, kind of like you can look back on the seasons with your kids and see what it's been rooted in that. And now I see that story, not just in its sorrow, but in its joy. As I see my mom kind of operating, as I think in the dance of the Trinity, the Holy Spirit acts. And my mom was saying, let's help Sharon. And my dad was, of course, willing to go to the end of the world to find a Walgreens that was open on Christmas to get dish soap. And when everyone left, and in the sorrow, there was this bittersweet knowing, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
And there is one.
Yes.
And this is what we believe in this season, who became like us, has experienced everything that we have experienced, feeling displaced on the holidays, feeling the absence of a loved one, maybe knowing that in the future there would be sorrow, remembering the joy of the past, and anticipating the joys set before him. That's all ambivalence that we're talking about. For, as you said so brilliantly just a few minutes ago, the sake of connection. And I think this is what we need to remember in a culture where, especially after COVID, we value connection. We kind of have learned to make it as easy and painless as possible.
Right.
I mean, why send a Christmas card if you can just post a profile picture on Facebook? Why call someone on the holidays when you can send them a text and just send a few emojis?
Yeah.
And so the story that I told, it involved sacrifice. And I think if we can approach this holiday season knowing there's going to be a lot of emotions, knowing the end goal is not perfection, but connection.
Yes.
And that will require sacrifice.
Yeah.
Whether it's time, money, our pride, our expectations, or maybe having to run to Walgreens to get dish soap. That's where we start to experience love.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is what this is about.
Yep. That is so neat. That is such a, just a place of hope. Yeah. It's sitting in both of these and knowing that we have an opportunity to connect. I love how you mentioned, how we can not send a card and we can put a profile pic on Facebook, or we can. And so as you were talking about that, I just thought, yes, sometimes it's what can I do that feels easiest. And sometimes I think for me, it's what can I do easiest so that I can connect to those that are right here in front of me. But we can also miss the opportunities to connect with those that are far away from me, as well. And so that was a really good word, Sharon.
That's the big setup with ambivalence, that if I have these high expectations and I'm committed to making it as easy as possible, that's a pretty much guarantee that we're going to end up disappointed, disgruntled, and mad that we wanted anything from the holidays to begin with. I let go of the expectations of perfection and everything looking great, and live in the reality, grief, sadness, disappointment, joy, anticipation, live in the reality, but also have a heart that's willing to sacrifice, that is willing to host something at my home, or drive an hour and a half to be with my elderly parents because they can't drive. That's willing to invite my daughter's new boyfriend, who I've never met and don't know, to the family gathering and shower him with love. That is willing to forgo maybe that my brother and I haven't spoke to each other for 2 years, and speak a word of kindness, of graciousness, trusting that from that sacrifice comes joy. You see, that's the model that Jesus gave us. He knew the pain that was set before him. anticipated, which was not the perfect gift, the perfect decor, the beautiful setting. It was relationship with us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Imperfect, ungrateful, frontal people. I think we have to remember what we're celebrating in these holidays. And as we enter into that, it shifts us from that word should.
Yep.
The kind of a posture of, what can I offer?
Yeah. What can I offer?
Knowing that is how we receive.
Yeah. What can I offer? One of the things when you were just talking to, I think, as we, when we have small kids and they're in our homes, it's so easy to control is not really the word that I want to say, but you've got the kids, they're all young, and you really get to create holidays like you want them. And then all of a sudden they grow up, like you were talking about your son, and they bring in girlfriends and boyfriends. And then if there's divorce, there's a broken family, and I just think it's some of what can create our own ambivalence is when we don't allow things to change and it not look like what we want it to look like. Like I think about myself, I just went through a divorce within the last year. And so our family is not all together. And I've always been the house that hosts everybody. So I've always had 17 people here every year, and I love to have it. And this last year and this year was not the opportunity for me to do that, And so Thanksgiving was, Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, and I ended up moving on Wednesday and Thursday. And if you had ever told me I would move on Thanksgiving, where Thanksgiving is one of my favorite holidays for us to not be around the table, and I'm actually moving clothes and things like that, I would have said no way. But it looked different, and I still was connected to my kids. And then yesterday, with it being the day after Thanksgiving, I've always wanted to host women that are without their families, single moms, divorcees, widows. And so we were able to have our own Friendsgiving yesterday. And so that was such a sweet time of connection. And really, we talked about bountiful. It was a bountiful opportunity for us to sit and enjoy each other in not the way that we would have written it, but such beauty and such connection was able to be had. And they were not even my family, but their family. And so it just looks different. So I would just say for those that are listening, like, what does it look like for you to lose expectations that it may not be what you want it to be? I'm trying to stay away from the word should. And what could it be? What possibilities could be this Christmas holiday?
I love that, shifting from the word should to what could be possible. And I think in that, we do have to have a heart, once again, that is attuned with the real meaning of this season. Yeah. That just at what seemed like the wrong time, in the wrong place, at the most impossible moment, Jesus came to be born. And he continues to do that again and again in my life. Yeah. This year during the season, my daughter does have a new boyfriend that I have not met. And I was talking to a friend and, said, if she wants him to come, I'm not going to invite him. And my friend just very quietly said, why? I hate that. I hate when you have friends that just know exactly how to get to your heart. And they said, because I don't want to. I don't want someone new. And the holidays are hard enough. And she just said, well, what do you think it will be like for your daughter if you don't invite him? And, because she's a good friend, I to be myself, which is not always lovely. And I said, well, I don't care what it'll be like for her. I'm thinking about me. And even as I was talking, I knew I was revealing my heart that still is set on things being a certain way and resists when things are not the way they should be.
Yeah.
And yet I know so many times God has invited me to the table again and again and again, when I've been messy, when I have not wanted to come, when I have been ungrateful, when I've been hiding things that I don't want other people to see. And so, you know, it's pretty quickly after that conversation, I knew what God was doing in my own heart.
Yeah.
Which was, if we are closed to invitation in this season of ambivalence, you know, Melody, the only person who will suffer is us.
That's right. Yep.
And so I think part of dealing with the ambivalence is having an invitational heart. Yeah. But once again, is like the one who came, who then later on said, here I am. I'm standing at the door knocking. If you'll just ask me in, I'll come in. And I know there have been many holidays where I've thought, I don't want to go to someone else's family and fit into their family when my own family is broken. I don't want to invite certain children's friends. I don't want to deal with issues with certain members of my family. And my heart that is closed to invitation misses out on the opportunity for that ambivalence, instead of to flood me with sickness, which is what the book of Proverbs says. Proverbs says that ambivalence makes the heart sick. We fight with these conflicting emotions. We get heart sick.
Yeah.
But invitation is the invitation for that sickness. And that's what you did yesterday. You invited people that were not part of your family.
Yeah.
People that maybe had no place to go. And in this community of women, you experienced bounty.
Yeah. It was, I found myself going to bed last night smiling. Do you ever do that? You know, and it was okay. It's different than what it used to be, but it's beautiful and bountiful.
Yeah.
So such a good word, Sharon, such a good word. So I think just, again, practically, when you feel that, and that, you know, it almost comes all the way up. Sometimes there's feelings of just, oh, I don't like that. I want to, you know, go get I'm trying to think of a drink at Starbucks, you know, to like go get something with whipped cream on top of it or whatever, you know, just to get back to, it's the holidays and the Christmas music and all that. Like, let it come in, invite it to sit with you and be here and journal about it or sit with it.
And so that leads to another part of the invitation that I think is important, is that we need to, and you started with this, we need to invite the parts of ourselves that are sad, that are lonely, that are grieving.
Yeah.
And not be mad at them, not resist them, not shame them, not condemn them. I saw a beautiful illustration of this in the grocery store last week. I went on Wednesday night at 5:15. I don't know why I did that. I mean, the grocery store was jam-packed before Thanksgiving, and so it was jam-packed. And I saw a young mother there with her cart just crammed full and her little toddler walking alongside, just crying, I don't want a turkey. And then that little girl just sat down in the middle of the aisle, right in the produce section in front of the cranberries, and she was throwing a fit. I could identify. You probably could too. I remember those.
Yes, I remember those days.
Get in and get out before the scene happened.
Yes.
And this mother took her hands off the cart, walked around to her daughter, and I kind of felt it in my body. Like I knew I think I would have said, now you get up and you come with me. I'm trying to fix this beautiful meal for you. Of course, that little girl didn't know that in that crammed cart were all the components for this wonderful family meal. Just like sometimes we don't know all the components in our lives are eventually part of a feast of mercy and grace and goodness. But this mother did the most unexpected thing. She plopped down in the middle of the aisle, right in front of the cranberries, sat next to her little toddler daughter, scooped her up on her lap, just kind of soothed her, started whispering in her ear. I don't know what she said. Pretty soon they were giggling. And wow. I really thought it was such a picture of how we need to be with ourselves, because that's how God is with us. Those parts of us that are mad or sad or afraid or lonely or grieving. Instead of saying, now you just stop that and you put on that smile and you make everyone think that everything is perfect. We need to welcome all parts of ourselves to the table. And spend that time imagining it's those parts that Jesus is saying, come to me and I will give you rest. Let's just be here for a minute, because our Father is making everything right. You might not see it in all those different ingredients in your life, but you can trust Him. And I really do encourage anyone that's listening, you won't make it through this season if you don't spend 5 minutes a day at least with that one who says, come to me. Let me give you some rest. You are my child. And I long to love you lavishly.
Oh, so good. And I love how you know, again, there's no time limit, but just 5 minutes a day to just sit and allow Him to be in whatever mess it is that it may be a mess you've created yourself, or it may be a mess somebody else has created, but He wants to sit in that with us, not clean it up and then invite Him in. Just sit, ask Him to actually come in and sit with us. And there's something beautiful about that, where He can take our burdens and He can make it light again for us. And so I love that. So Sharon, I see 2 books behind you. We can't get off without talking a little bit about your books behind you. The Last Addiction is one that has been, at least it's been in my hands, and it's been in the hands of a lot of people around me for a long time. And then your book, Belonging, you wrote, I believe it was last year. Was it last year or the year before?
It was 2 years ago.
Okay. So talk a little bit about those before we jump off, and I'll make sure again to send the links in our show notes for those as well.
Well, thank you, Melody. The Last Addiction, Why Self-Help is Not Enough. It is a book about addiction, whether it's substance abuse or people pleasing or sexual addiction or eating addictions. And unfortunately, the holidays are that season where sometimes those things get out of control because we don't know how to deal with this ambivalence, all feelings that we're talking about. And addiction seductively whispers, you don't have to feel it all. But then it all comes crashing back. And in January, we're trying to fix ourselves with the selves that got ourselves into these messes in the first place. And so Last Addiction talks about another way. Instead of trying harder, doing better, doing more, about finding the community and the connection that can lead to healing. And belonging, finding the way back to one another, just kind of picks up where that book leaves off. That often in these seasons or struggles, they kind of make us want to hide and pull away from people. Actually, the antidote to wholeness and healing is to lean in to one another, to lean into community like you did yesterday, to lean into God, the one who relationship is at the heart of what he longs for. And so I think they would be encouraging books and maybe perfect books for this season where so many of us struggle or we feel like we don't belong. I think the biggest lie of the enemy is whispered, especially in this season, and that is, you are alone. And that is not true. I'm not saying it doesn't feel that way sometimes. It certainly does for me. And so finding that path that gives us signposts of reminders that we were not meant to do it alone and we do not have to do it alone can be a way through.
So good. What a beautiful way to close out our time together. So yes, I will encourage each of you, if you've not read those books, they are both rich with just content, really understanding why we all run to rescue from something. We're all going to experience loss and pain. And we just talked about ambivalence, but if we're not sitting in a place of ambivalence, inviting it in, we will naturally run to rescue from that place. And so Last Addiction is a beautiful book. And then Belonging, just a place. It's interesting. I think you said the lie that we can believe is that we're all alone. And then the secondary lie that comes behind that is, what's wrong with me? And so this book, Belonging, is such a beautiful book to just be reminded that God has created us for love and belonging and to connect with people. So my encouragement as we leave this podcast is find somebody to connect with even this weekend. And I know we can sometimes say, well, that person's not pursuing me. Well, you have a God who is after you, loving you, pursuing you, and wants to sit with you in this. That can then help you pursue others. And so my hope will be that you can find connection and that you can bring connection to those around you over the holidays.
That's a beautiful holiday wish.
Well, Sharon, thank you so much for joining us today. We have many topics that we can discuss and share to the world. And so I will be circling back around and seeing if we can have some of those conversations.
I would love.
Okay. Thank you so much.
This episode has been brought to you by Life Beyond Betrayal. Life Beyond Betrayal is a comprehensive program that provides a community as well as 3 courses for women. The first course is Surviving Trauma Beyond Betrayal. Our second course is called Grieving Beyond Betrayal. And the third course is called Reclaiming You Beyond Betrayal. This is a self-paced program that you can take as long as you want to go through, and also provides a community so that you feel like you have the support that you need. So check out Life Beyond Betrayal membership at lifebeyondbetrayal.com.